Welcome to our Let's Talk Tri Delta podcast. I'm Lexi Legs from our Milliken chapter, and I'm going to be your host for today's episode. I serve Tri Delta as the program development specialist, which means I get to work on some of the amazing transformational programs that we offer our collegiate members, such as Body Image 3D, Behind Happy Faces, and AAUW Start Smart, just to name a few. Today, I am joined by Kit Moorman and Estacia Brandenburg of MJ Sorority, which is a division of MJ Companies, a risk management insurance company. MJ Sorority serves 19 of the 26 national Panhellenic organizations across more than 700 campuses in the U.S. and Canada. They are Tri Delta's partner in providing insurance and risk management consulting, and they work closely with us and our chapters every day, offering the right coverage, risk management strategies, and resources to support our members. MJ Sorority has launched the Financial Head Start, which is a personal financial planning podcast, and we are so excited to announce that it is going to be available to Tri Delta members. Each episode provides actionable insights and strategies that equip our listeners with a foundational understanding for navigating significant financial decisions in their early 20s and beyond, which we know is super important, especially in this economy. Today, Kit and Estacia are going to tell us so much more about MJ Sorority and the Financial Head Start podcast. And you might also notice that we have another special face joining us today, and that is Ari Collins from our chapter at Lake Forest. She is a member of the Collegiate Advisory Panel, and she also had an opportunity to preview the podcast. So we figured we'd invite her to join the conversation. So welcome everybody to the podcast.
Thanks. We're so happy to be here.
Yes. How are we doing today?
Pretty good.
Oh, wow. Good. Awesome. I'll give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. We'll start with Kit and Estacia if you want to go first, and then pass it on to Ari. But tell us a little bit more about what you do for MJ Sororities and a little bit about the company.
Sure thing. Well, thank you, Lexi, for that introduction and for sharing a little bit about the podcast. Estacia and I were lucky enough to host the 5 episodes, and we had so much fun producing. Maybe not producing, hosting. I'm still learning my podcast lingo, but it was fun to get off the ground, and we're so excited that Tri Delta has offered it to their members. So again, my name is Kit Moorman. I am part of the MJ Sorority team, and my job is to think about risk management day to day. How are we providing resources for members like Ari in making decisions in their own chapters, and how are we working with headquarters staff, with advisors, with chapter officers and chapter members to ensure that we are getting to yes, that we are hosting safe events, that we are managing our properties well and keeping your members safe. So if you go to mjsorority.com and read something, I probably had a hand in it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kit.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kit. I'm Estacia Brandenburg, and I am the senior client executive that works day to day with Tri Delta and several of our other sorority clients. So it's my job to understand the actual insurance coverages that you need and that you have and that Tri Delta purchases in order to keep your members safe. And kind of recover when something should go wrong. I also am available then to answer questions kind of on the go. So while Kit provides all of the resources that are ongoing resources for you to read and see and watch about risk management, I'm usually the first line that gets questions from all levels of Tri Delta, from your headquarters staff to your collegiate members, to your house directors, to your house corporation and your chapter advisor volunteers about day-to-day risk management and what's going on with Tri Delta. Because sometimes the resources maybe you don't feel like they fit exactly your circumstance, even though mostly they do. And then often Kit will take the questions that I get and translate them into resources that then we can share with everybody for their ongoing risk management education.
Awesome. Sounds like some really important information being produced with this team, and a lot of support in areas where we need it the most, especially for event planning and things of that nature. Always important to keep our members safe and healthy. So welcome. And then Ari, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you all for including me in this conversation. I'm very excited to be here. So as Lexi mentioned, my name is Ari. I am a senior at Lake Forest College. I joined Tri Delta my first year on campus. We're the Epsilon Beta chapter of Tri Delta. Um, Over the past almost like 4 years at this point, I've had a lot of different positions within the chapter. My first year, I was director of first year experience. I then transitioned to vice president of community relations. And last year, I was actually collegiate chapter president. I've served on the slating committee, and I'm this year I'm serving on the conduct committee as well as the DEIB committee. In addition to my involvements within my chapter, I've also had the opportunity to serve on the Lead Always work group my sophomore year. And I think Lexi also mentioned that this year I'm serving on the Collegiate Advisor panel, which has been a lot of fun so far. I love the opportunity to bring my perspective, especially from a smaller liberal arts institution. Um, so that's been a really awesome opportunity. Um, and then in terms of like my education, I am a double major in psychology and Spanish, and I have a minor in African American studies. And I don't know, I'm currently interning at a preschool in Lake Forest right now, which has been a lot of fun. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Awesome. That is amazing, Ari. It sounds like you've got a lot of Tri Delta involvement. So I'm super excited to hear more about your insights in the podcast and what you've learned from it. So we'll jump right in and kind of start. And Kit and Estacia, can you tell us what inspired the Financial Head Start podcast?
Well, I think it's really an outgrowth of how important it is to MJ Sorority to support the community at large in all areas. So while we're absolutely neck deep in risk management, it's important to us that all members of the collegiate organizations have a great experience, and we want you to be launched to be successful adults as well. And so the leader of our department, Cindy Stellhorn, had this great idea to make this happen and handed it over to Kit and I to actually get it off the ground. And so we took the information that we have, hopefully we're more in the middle of our careers and some of the lessons that we've learned, and brought along a lot of our colleagues and friends who have expertise in different areas of financial adulting, to put it in one way. And so we then had the opportunity to interview them about the work that they do, to dig in for the different areas, for the different episodes.
Absolutely. And how do you think the podcast addresses some of the challenges that we're seeing with young women and their financial stability?
I think the first episode especially sets the stage really well that you don't have to know everything to start thinking about your financial health, and it doesn't have to look perfect. Leaving your collegiate experience, leaving that membership experience during your college years, I think can feel very lonesome and very isolating sometimes. You go from a huge community of people to presumably a new job or a new city, or maybe you're in your same city and most of your friends have left. And it can feel really daunting. So I think the first episode on saving and budgeting really sets the stage that not everything has to be perfect for you to start thinking about making healthy financial decisions for yourself. And as you get into some of the other subject matter episodes, we have guests that talk about compensation, knowing your worth as young women going into the workforce. Are you appropriately setting the bar for yourself? Because how you see and value yourself from day one is going to impact how others see and value you moving forward, even later into your career. So I think that just understanding that starting is the most important thing is really the value, and where this podcast can kind of help answer, where do I start?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect also makes it more approachable. Understanding that we're here to help and support you, and navigating life after college is something that we in Tri Delta prioritize and recognize is difficult to manage. I like that you mentioned Know Your Worth, because we also partner with the American Association of University Women to provide AAUW Start Smart, which is a salary negotiation program. And it talks significantly about knowing your worth. So it sounds like Financial Head Start, if any of our members have participated in AAUW Start Smart, this is a really good way to complement what you're learning in there, because like you said, knowing your worth is so imperative, especially in the workforce. So I love what we're doing with this already. So the podcast is a 5-episode course, and it's designed to cover essential topics such as personal financial management, compensation, and like we said, knowing your worth, just to name a few. Can you all walk us through some of those main topics and themes of the podcast?
Sure. So you mentioned a few. Each episode kind of has a core focus. So we partnered with, as Estacia shared, experts across the MJ companies. So the sorority department is a small piece of what, big MJ does. We focus solely on sorority and clients, but we have all these great resources around us. And we thought, why don't we just kind of bring these two things together? So the first episode, Saving and Budgeting, is hosted by a financial planner, somebody who has expertise in thinking through, how am I setting myself up for success? The second, our compensation consultant on staff who works with companies, Fortune 500 companies, smaller businesses, to determine how much a position should be paid. So she really kind of analyzes and thinks through, how do I know my worth?
The next couple of episodes then are some of the nuts and bolts of questions that then you'll be asked when you start a job. So first of all, understanding your benefits package. So maybe you need to buy health insurance right out of the gate and you'll buy that through your employer, or maybe you'll be on your parents' insurance for a little while longer. So you might not even have to worry about that in the first couple of years, but eventually you probably are going to need to face buying your own health insurance. So what kinds of questions should you be asking of your employer, and what kinds of options will be offered then when that step comes and you need to buy that health insurance, and then the other kind of benefits that might be offered through your employer. And those are also questions that you'll want to ask when you're looking for a job, interviewing for a job, before you sign and commit to a company. Are you going to be comfortable with the benefits that they're offering? And then along with it is then buying your own car insurance, buying renter's insurance in your apartment, eventually buying homeowner's insurance when you buy your first home. All of those are important parts of protecting your future, to make sure you have those insurance pieces. And they can be a little confusing, and there are lots of options out there. So what should you be looking for when you start to buy those products to protect yourself?
And then the last episode is planning for retirement, which even at the beginning of recording this podcast, still to me feels very far away. And Ari, it's even farther away for you. But to begin thinking about that now, and whenever now is, start. And so I think that the conversations that Estacia and I got to have with these experts, I know I learned a ton. I think you'll probably hear when you listen a few moments in the podcast where both of us say, wait, go back. What? Let's make a note of that.
Just really understanding the power of compounding interest and how much more impact you can have on your future if you start saving now, even if just a little bit, versus waiting until later when you're closer to retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. So retirement, benefits, all very important topics to navigate, and definitely difficult post-college. So definitely could see that being super helpful for our members. Ari, how does this resonate with you?
Yeah, I think I think my generation, were a very independent bunch, I think like we've grown up and we've heard messages like, this is your time to empower yourselves. The future is yours, the future is in your hands. And I think we hear things like the importance of personal financial management and other things along those lines, to secure like those successful futures. We hear messages about it, but I think a lot of times we're only just hearing those messages, and like the actual how it's being implemented into our lives maybe is the piece that's missing. Whether we aren't taught that in school, or it's not conversations that are being had at home. A lot of times, like I'm saying, like I'm hearing these messages like, okay, like let's empower ourselves. Like, how can we empower ourselves? But I think what the podcast like really did, and I'll get into this more later, is like really did a great job of like leveling the playing field for everyone, whether or not you've had those conversations or like have been exposed to that information before, really did a great job of like leveling that playing field. So like I said, I think that overall, like hearing more about what the complete series will be really does resonate with me. As like I mentioned, I'm a senior student. Just thinking about the future, it's very daunting. Especially like just again, like hearing those messages of like, okay, well, you're gonna be on your own soon, and like these are decisions that you're gonna have to make, and you're like, okay, well, how do I make like the best decision for me? So I'm very excited to be able to listen to the rest of the podcast, because if if the rest of the episodes are anything like the first episode, I know that it's going to be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how you mentioned that too, that it's just really helpful for us in these times to navigate some of those things, especially when they say, you know, you want to be financially responsible, but then you're like, well, how? And it sounds like for you, this is the missing puzzle piece of it, giving us that how to be financially responsible. I think back to when I started, I'm an educator by trade. So understanding retirement benefits and things like that look different for teachers than it does for my counterparts in the for-profit space. So definitely feel like a podcast like this would have been super helpful when I was starting off. So, like we shared, many of our collegiate members and young alumni are just starting out in their professional journeys. Why do we think it's important for us to develop the financial literacies at this early age?
I think again, like we mentioned, it's really the power of starting now. I think it's easy to push it off and think, well, I'll learn about this later. I'll figure this out later once I have my life together. But the truth is, I'm far enough in to say, honestly, like it's really hard to ever feel like your life is totally together. There's always something that you could work on, but it's important to understand again the power of compounding interest and getting started now so I can have that safety net in case something happens. Getting started on saving now, even if it's just a few dollars, of deciding how to budget so I can feel like I can have control. It'll make that day when I feel like I have everything under control happen a whole lot sooner. And so I think it's really just the power of starting now and understanding. Of course, then there are those questions that we're going to walk in and an employer is going to say, okay, here are the benefits. What do you want? Sign on, commit to this now. I know for us, that's happening next week at our company. Every year we look at, it's called open enrollment, and we have the chance to choose what our benefits are going to be for the next year. And so when that day comes, they're not given a whole lot of time to figure it out. So it's good to have some advance notice on what we think we'll need and be able to give some thought to it.
All
I
right.
think too, when you're in college, when you're in an organization like TriDelta, you have this fantastic community and it's right there. Whether you live in a house together, whether you rent an apartment together or get together once a week at chapter, you have an opportunity to ask questions and talk to people in a way that you really don't have at any other time in your life. And having, like, Ari, I love what you said about it kind of tells you how to empower yourself, how to start thinking about difficult questions, because as you get older, I know, I'm like, oh, I'm, 27, 28, 29. I should know the answer to this. And you really like sometimes shouldn't, somebody has to tell you or teach you or talk to you about how to think through problems. And you're at this great space in your life where you have trusted advisors around you. So I think taking advantage of this time and this podcast as a way to start those conversations with your sisters is just a really, really cool opportunity.
Absolutely. I love that. What advice do you all have for our juniors and seniors or even young alumni?
Good question.
That's a tough question. I think I guess maybe my best advice is not to think you have to have all the answers right now, but really look at people you admire, ask lots of questions of the people that you admire, find those mentors and lean on them as far as asking questions about their future, people that you feel like have something in common with you, and see where they started and maybe what they wish they had learned along the way.
Yeah, and I think being open to building those relationships with people. I think I remember being told, find a mentor. And I was like, is this like dating? Like, do you have to just like, will you be my mentor? Will you be like, it's a really uncomfortable ask at first. And I remember having coffee with 1,000 people right after college. And I learned that people love to give advice. They love to be asked, hey, what do you think? And I think just knowing that and empowering yourself to say, I can just, yes, sort of date for mentors and ask people to coffee and pick their brain about how they've managed even these seemingly small things in life that, to Estatia's point, compound. So just ask as many questions as you can of as many people as you can.
All right, absolutely. Ask and learn from the people that have already been there in the positions that you would like to see yourself in. I love that. That's great advice. Ari, so have already shared that you've had an opportunity to preview the podcast. What were your initial thoughts about it?
Initially, even before I watched it, I was very excited because I have always wanted like to be more literate in my own personal financial management. Like frankly, I have none. And I've always like I know that that's something like that's a step that I need to take. And I think that a lot of people are in the same boat as me. We just don't really know like how to start. Like you heard from my majors, I'm a very humanities type person, and I know that there's some deltas out there who are like getting those degrees and they might be learning skills like this throughout their degrees, but I'm not really learning that in my psychology classes, you know? So this was like a really like great opportunity for me to take that first step. And like I said before, like I think the podcast does a really great job of laying the foundation of how to start. The speakers really aim to meet you where you're at, you know? And like I think you mentioned this earlier, like there's not really a perfect time to like start in terms of like figuring out your own personal financial management. There's no perfect set of conditions. I think what they do is really like lay a great foundation for you to build upon. And like I will say, like I over Thanksgiving break, I'm gonna go to my financial institution and like talk to them about like creating multiple savings accounts so I can like start saving in a different way that I am right now. So I think it's just a really valuable resource for me, especially like you kind of heard, but for all of us in general, because like I said, it's really it's you're able to the podcast does a great job of meeting us where we're at, and which I think because like everyone's in a really different situation, like there's never one situation that's gonna be the same. So yeah, I think it's a really valuable resource in that sense.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. My next question was going to be, how do you think it's valuable for your peers? But it sounds like you've already shared that with how it meets you where you are and can supplement to what you're already getting in your college courses, especially if it's not necessarily something that would be talked about because of the majors that you've chosen. So I can definitely agree with you on that one. Like I said, from being a teacher and a peer of that experience, we didn't really have those conversations in my undergraduate experience. And so navigating my financial literacy experience was definitely interesting. So I can definitely agree with you on that one. So I'm just curious, for Kit and Estacia, if there's somebody who is ready to dive into the Financial Head Start podcast, what would you say is the best way for them to maximize the insights that are shared?
I think finding each episode is titled with the subject matter. So kind of like we were talking about earlier, there's savings, there's retirement, there's understanding your benefits packages. Start where you're interested, or where you think is most accessible for you. I know this subject matter is really intimidating for me. So starting with something that felt manageable helped. And I think that, as you're listening to it or thinking about listening to it, start somewhere where you're comfortable or start somewhere where you want to learn more, and then go ask questions of people. Use that knowledge to say, okay, I might not know everything, but now I kind of know just enough to ask some intelligent questions, to think about how I want to learn more and just get the ball rolling.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So yeah, like as Kit is saying, there's no magic in the order of the episodes. So
Mhm.
jump around. Like if you think you listen to budgeting and saving and you're like, I want to learn more about that, I'm going to jump to retirement, then listen to retirement. And then come back and think, okay, now I'm getting ready for a job interview. So I'm going to listen to the compensation consulting message and have that help be a guide as you're entering those conversations for your next job.
I love that. So kind of like a choose your own adventure. What is going to be best for you and how can you meet yourself and jump in where you feel comfortable? Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, thank you so much, Estacia and Kit and Ari, for sharing such valuable insights today about the podcast. I think it's clear to me that this Financial Head Start podcast is going to be a powerful tool for our members. And even myself, I'm going to dabble in them after this interview as well. I think it's going to give everybody a really good foundation for starting their financial journeys. So for all of our listeners out there that are tuning in, please do not miss out on this fantastic resource. You all have access to it by logging onto leader.org. It is under the personal and professional development category. And we encourage you to share it with your chapter sisters. If they're not listeners, you can put them onto that podcast and Let's Talk Tri Delta too. As Tri-Deltas, you all know that we value our personal growth and development through lifelong learning, and this is just one more way that we are empowering our members for a lifetime. So thank you all so much for joining us again today. Really appreciate having you here. Be sure to tune in next time for more conversations that support our sisterhood in every way. Make sure to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast. We love those 5-star ratings. Thank you all so much for joining us, and until next time, Delta love.